Long ago, a friend recommended some Studio Ghibli films and I managed to watch a few, but I knew there were loads I'd not seen. Before anyone moans, as far as my research shows, it is pronounced Ghibli, not Ghibli. Anyway, eventually I was able to get through them all because I was given the Great Studio Ghibli collection for my birthday. Now I've watched all of them, I'm going to go through my 5 loved and hated films from the collection. I watched all of them subtitled, so we'll only be judging those versions, not taking the dubbed versions into account, even though I'm showing the dubbed trailers. I just thought it would make it easier for anyone watching who isn't familiar with Studio Ghibli, though there were some I couldn't find an English trailer for. I'm specifically saying the collection because some films like Nausicaa are technically not Studio Ghibli films, as they were released before Studio Ghibli was officially founded, so by saying it's films from the collection I can count all 24 films it contains. The only entry I am not going to include is Panda Go Panda because it's not really a film, it's 2 episodes put together, as in there are opening credits, an episode, ending credits, the opening again, the next episode, and then the closing credits again. That's not a film, so that takes us to 23 films to take into consideration. So, without further ado, let's get cracking. Ponyo. It tells the story of Ponyo, a goldfish who befriends a human boy and so wants to become human. You've probably already made the connection to The Little Mermaid, and it turned out that was the main influence to the story. Even so, it was a wonderful film. Funny, gorgeous animation, likeable characters even if the mother needed talking to about her driving, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Although The Little Mermaid was the influence for the story, it's only loosely based on it, so there are plenty of other things going on to give it its own identity, and I'd say it's better than the Disney film about it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Ocean Waves. Although it's on my hated list, I don't hate it, but I wasn't overly enthralled by it. It tells the story of 2 friends and a love triangle with a girl who is transferred to their school, but the girl's a bit of a bitch, which made for some interesting scenarios, but with how she acted towards people trying to help her in those scenarios, I started hoping karma would bite her in the arse. Despite that, the film is quite short, so it keeps a decent pace with what's going on, and wraps things up quite quickly, so I was never bored watching it. It ended up being an alright film, so I would say it's one of the weaker entries rather than a bad entry. Just bear in mind that if you want to give it a watch, there isn't a dubbed version. Laputa Castle in the Sky. I originally saw it many years ago, and when it came to watching it again as part of the collection, I couldn't remember much about it. I know I liked the film when I first saw it all those years ago, but I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did this time. It had some great characters, really enjoyed the plot, which revolved around the search for a magical floating island and preventing its secrets from falling into the hands of the military forces. I was proper engrossed in what was going on and loved it start to finish. From Up on Poppy Hill. This is a bit of a strange one. Like with Ocean Waves, it's not a bad film, focusing on a group of school kids who use a large hall for their social clubs and oppose plans to have the place torn down. It was entertaining enough for me to see it through to the end, and it had some nice side plots with some of the characters, but even so, I wasn't exactly riveted by it. I lent the collection to my friend Jenny, and apparently she quite enjoyed the film, saying despite nothing major really happening, it was an interesting story. It wouldn't be in her top 5 favourites, but she certainly liked it more than I did. When Marnie Was There. This was the last film released by Studio Ghibli, which came out in 2014 and tells the story of a girl called Anna who has health problems, so is sent to live with relatives. She stumbles across an abandoned mansion, which is where she meets Marnie and the two become friends, but as Anna finds out more about Marnie and her family, it makes a really nice story and the ending got me right in the feels. Considering how much I enjoyed the film, I was quite surprised when Jenny said that she liked it, but not as much as I thought she would have. Porco Rosso. Now this is a weird one of those films where things are alluded to that you really want to know more about, but it's never mentioned again. In this case, the film focuses on Porco Rosso, a World War I fighter pilot who is now a freelance bounty hunter chasing after air pirates, and it's mentioned during the film he used to be human, but a curse turned him into a pig. Thing is, I wanted to know more about the curse and what all that was about far more than the actual plot. All that aside, the main plot was okay, and the film as a whole was entertaining enough. even if it was a little bit weird that people seemed perfectly okay with him being a human pig. Princess Mononoke. This was one of the very first Studio Ghibli films I ever saw, and I loved it. It may have an overused plot of people should live in harmony with nature and look after it motif, but it's still a hugely impressive film with some great animation. It's a bit on the long side at 2¼ hours, but there's a lot going on, so there's very little padding to make the film seem like it's dragging. As a minor warning, there are several scenes that are definitely not for children due to the amount of blood shown or limbs being severed during fights, so if you don't mind that, it's a great watch and I'm very much looking forward to watching it again.
Princess Mononoke.
Only yesterday. It was rather dull. I get the idea. She goes to visit relatives, it brings back memories of when she was a child, and she becomes nostalgic for her childhood self, back when she had dreams and ambitions, a time which seems like it was only yesterday. Thing is, I just found it to be a little on the dull side. Although I enjoyed but wasn't exactly enthralled with films like Ocean Waves, at least that stayed focused and wrapped up before it outstayed its welcome. But Only Yesterday was not only less entertaining, but it's also 45 minutes longer, so it became a bit of a slog, which Jenny also found to be the case. Before going to number 1, here are some honourable mentions.
This is just the kind of place I've always imagined. Boss! You okay back there?
Fine.
Lord Yuba!
He's quite spirited. Apparently he didn't inhale too much of the jungle's poison.
The boy knows that we're here.
What? Are we safe? I really don't think he intends to hurt us.
Once a borrower has been seen, the human's curiosity can't be stopped.
I see the walls, then see the...
I'm actually going to have to cheat. There are 2 films being put here, so I'll get the one most people are probably expecting to see out the way first. Spirited Away. I've seen this film several times and I love it. I watched it again when I was staying with my mum over Christmas. I still very much enjoyed it and so did she. It tells the story of Chihiro, who gets trapped in a spirit world and has to find a way to save her parents, who have been turned into pigs. Actual pigs this time. It's another 2-hour-ish film, but those 2 hours absolutely fly by. It's one of those films where if someone has never seen a Ghibli film before and asks for a recommendation on which one to watch first, this is the one I'd recommend. However, if Spirited Away is the happy ending, feel-good film that I'd recommend, there's one that's still an amazing film, but it's at the polar opposite end of the happy scale. Grave of the Fireflies. Oh my god, this is so sad, which is made even sadder by the fact it's based on true events, telling the story of Seita and Setsuko, whose village is bombed during World War II, so they're sent to live with their aunts, but without ruining anything, things go from bad to worse. I rarely cry at films. I could probably count on one hand the films that have made me cry, but this is one of them. Jenny doesn't like it, but her favourite Ghibli film is Howl's Moving Castle, so her argument is invalid. Now excuse me while I go bawl my eyes out. Though, seriously, Howl's Moving Castle wasn't too bad.
Will guarantee your safe return.
Before shaming my most hated, here are some... they're not really dishonourable mentions, as I did like them, just not as much as most of the other films.
If disobedience to His Majesty is considered a crime punishable by death, well then, the only choice is to kill me.
My Neighbours the Yamadas. Oh dear, what the hell was this? I was very tempted to exclude this one as well, as I wasn't sure whether or not it could be called a film, but apparently it is, and it was awful. It's pretty much an hour and 45 minutes of 5-minute short stories that have no narrative or connection whatsoever. One story will be about how they accidentally left their daughter somewhere, so they try to find her, but when they do, it then flicks to a completely different story, and it's as if the previous events didn't happen. There's one story where the son wants to ask a girl out on a date, he finally plucks up the courage to ask her, her, she says yes, and then it moves on without ever mentioning anything again about the girl, how the date went, nothing. I think the film is divided into sections and the stories in each section revolve around some sort of theme, but it became a huge slog to get to the end and I nearly turned it off several times, but I kept going hoping something would happen to give everything meaning and tie it all together. It didn't, and when I lent it to Jenny, she watched it for an hour and then did turn it off because she, and I quote, has better things to do. So that's my top 5 loved and hated Studio Ghibli films. Take this list with a pinch of salt because as I've only seen most of the films once, future watches may cause the list to change, but most likely only slightly. Even so, don't forget to let me know what your top 5 loved and hated films are and check the description for a link to my Twitter page. But for now, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it and see you next time.